Who should be the number one pick in your fantasy baseball draft this year? Let's look at the candidate. Trea Turner, now of the Philadelphia Phillies. Trea Turner, it doesn't really matter where he plays. He has been a 5-category stud for years now. One of the leaders in steals. He's just coming off a season where he had his career high in RBIs. A strong line of 298 average, 21 home runs, exactly 100 RBIs, 101 runs scored, 27 stolen bases. And in this loaded Phillies lineup, you know he'll cross the plate plenty, so no worries there. If there is a concern, the fact that he's now going to turn 30 this season, although he is still one of the main base stealers, his stolen base totals have actually gone down for 4 straight seasons. With a little bit more age, under 30 steals, look, he still should be good for 20 plus steals, but again, there's really no holes you can poke in his game, so Turner, definitely a solid option. Then we have to talk about the guy who was undoubtedly the MVP, and that was Aaron Judge, hitting 62 home runs, 131 runs batted in. Oh, and not just power, he also hit 311 and 16 stolen bases, just to prove that he actually is a 5-category contributor. Will he hit 62 home runs again? Odds are he won't. You might want to not admit this, but there's also the fact that instead of now playing for a contract in which he bet on himself and he won, and then now he got paid, I'm not saying that he's going to get complacent or anything like that. I'm just saying there's a difference between playing for a contract and playing with a contract. Many times we've seen players get paid and then kind of buckle under the pressure of performing to that. Can't be blamed for taking him with a first pick. It's very tempting, but I might be a little concerned, and I do want the guy who I think can get me those guaranteed stolen bases. Here's a guy who I know will get you steals and pretty much help you in every category, of course. That's why we're talking about Ronald Acuna Jr. Despite playing only 119 games last year, he finished 7th in the league in stolen bases. You know the speed is there, you know the power is there. He's in a stacked still Braves lineup. Only thing we can say about him is that, well, you're not necessarily going to get that elite average like with Trea Turner. Acuna is a 277 career hitter, and last year that number was down to 266. But really, there's no reason to hold anything against Acuna. He could come back and potentially have his best season yet, because this is the youngest player we've talked about so far. That is, of course, because we haven't yet talked about Julio Rodriguez. J-Rod is now in the mix for the number one pick after just playing one season. What a season it was. Finished with 28 home runs and 25 steals. What can Rodriguez do as an encore? Don't want to get carried away and say he's going 40-40, like he's going to be the MVP. You can't really bet against it because we know his potential is there, but we also have to be realistic. It is possible he does take a step back as opposed to forward. We have to acknowledge there is some risk with taking a guy this young. I would say there's very little risk in taking a guy like Yordan Alvarez. This is a guy who is just a pure slugger. You're going to get a batting average among the league leaders, 306. Only 11 batters were over 300 last year. Only player in the majors who had a slugging percentage higher than 600 was Aaron Judge, and then Yordan Alvarez. He's a guy who gives you power. He's probably the safest pick because he's got that floor. He's always making hard contact in a stacked lineup. He's going to score runs and drive in runs by the bunches. Only downside to Alvarez is not getting you steal. You're getting probably the highest floor in terms of all the other categories, just no stolen bases. In some leagues, he won't have outfield eligibility, and that would hurt a lot of times. He should, in most formats after last year, have enough games under his belt to qualify at outfield. That's not giving you a positional advantage. Typically, getting a guy like a Trea Turner, somebody who plays middle infield, especially qualifies at second base, over a guy like outfield, that's something that you do want to consider. But again, it's so hard to say that you would be disappointed with Alvarez on the way that he hits. And then the final guy I want to talk about, you might be wondering, where is Shohei Ohtani? Here he is. Let's talk fantasy. Here's the thing. It depends. But the platform matters here. In Yahoo, for example, Shohei Ohtani is treated like two human beings. There is Shohei Ohtani, the batter, and Ohtani, the pitcher. You have to pick. And you could even have both on your team if you want, but you don't get both stats. That's something that makes it hard to say that he should be the number one pick because you're only getting one set of stats. And look, those stats are really good, but you might notice we haven't talked about any pitchers yet because it's hard to say that any pitcher really is deserving of the top overall pick. And look, as a hitter, tremendous also. but did take a slight step back, not as much power or speed as the year before. 34 home runs, 95 RBIs, 11 steals, a 273 batting average. Really good numbers, but if you stack those against all the guys we've already talked about, it doesn't quite add up to the same value. Now, if you're in a league where he's treated as both, you can pick one or the other, you're still only getting half of those because usually you have to pick, am I going to use him this week or this day as a pitcher or as a hitter? Really good on both sides, but not enough to warrant, I think, the number one overall pick. Who should be the 1.1, the number one pick in fantasy baseball for 2023? When I'm on the clock and I have that decision to make, I'm taking Ronald Acuna Jr. This is the fact that he was so good last year, even without being fully healthy to start the season and missing that much time. I think that he might be due for his best season yet. All right, now you know who should be the number one pick in fantasy baseball. What about for next year in fantasy football? Check out this video right here.